Hello everyone, and this is a tutorial on how to shade or how to build materials for terrains using image-based textures. Now, the first thing is this is not a beginner level tutorial. So there are a few things that I'm assuming you already know. So firstly, you should know how to make terrains, or you should at least have like the basic terrain building maps, like you have a displacement map or a flow map and stuff like that. Okay, so this is not, the tutorial does not really cover how to build terrains. The second thing is you should know how to make materials, right? Like, I mean, this is, the assumption is that you know your basic renderer and how to build materials. And lastly, the aim with this tutorial is something that is a little tricky, which is I'm going to try and keep it as generic as possible. So even though I am using Octane, the aim is that the tools I'm going to use are available in almost any renderer. So if you know your render engine, you should be able to replicate the same thing in any renderer possible. Okay, so let's just go over the basic terrain that I have, and then I will talk about what are the tools that you need. Okay, so this is, I'm just going to give you like a brief breakdown of what I have. So what I have here is I have a basic height field, and I built a mask using a sphere. Okay, so that's my sphere. And then I added a noise, which is like a cellular noise, blurred a little bit and then distorted. Okay, that's primarily it. And then I created a slope mask and gave it a slump, which sort of smoothens it out a little bit. And then you generate a flow field. And then we build like another mask, a slope based mask, which plugs into the erode. Okay, so this is your erosion. And then lastly, this is important. So if you are building terrains and you want to shade using the various attributes or maps, then if you want to generate custom maps, like you want curvature or you want slope, like you get some ready-made, which is like you'll get flow and you'll get debris and you'll get water. Okay, so the flow, if you're working in Houdini, you will have to apply this height field, flow field. Okay. Earlier it used to be inbuilt into the erosion node, but now it's separate. So you need to apply that. But yeah, if you want to build something custom, like you want a slope map, then the way to do it is you generate a mask. Okay, so in this case, I've built a curvature mask. And then you use a node called copy layer. Okay, and the copy layer, you can rename the mask into anything else. Because if you create a new mask, the previous one gets overridden. And you can only create one mask at a time. So what you do is you store that mask into a new attribute. So in our case, we're storing it to curvature, and then you keep doing that over and over again. So I created another mask, which is for slope, and then I stored it using the copy layer into a map called slope. Okay, that's basically it. And then I created a brand new flow field again. Okay, because the earlier one gets sort of put into the erosion, but I just wanted a new one, so I built a new one. And then finally, this is the visualize. This is just for show. Okay, I'm not going to use this, but what I've done is I just have like one color, and then I have the flow. The slope is generating like the cliffs, and then I have the curvature, which is generating like the really fine detail on the ground. And then you just write it out. So writing it out is you want to write out your height field as an EXR, so you have the maximum amount of detail. So that should be kept to like 32-bit floating point. The format should be RGB. You don't want RGBA. Okay, like we don't really need an alpha map for this. And for the other stuff, like you have the debris, flow, and water, you can store each one in an individual channel. Okay, so what you'll end up getting is you'll get something like this. So this has my flow map and the debris and the water, each stored in an individual channel. And the same way I ended up storing the slope and the curvature as individual channels as well. So the advantage of this is that you basically save up on space. Okay, so rather than having like 6 separate maps, you have one map, and the grayscale values in each channel. So that's primarily it. Like, so if you're doing it in any other software, what you will get in the end is you will have your height map, and then you will have one map which controls which has your debris flow and water, and then one more map which has your curvature and slope and any other mask that you're generating. Okay, so now let's talk about what all nodes that you need, or what all tools you'll need to build the final material. So as I said, I'm going to try and keep it as generic as possible. So this is stuff that literally every render engine has nowadays. Okay, so the first thing you need is, of course, you need your basic image map. Okay, something that will import your bitmap. The second thing you need is you need like a mix map. So something that will allow you to mix two images together plus a masking capability. So this is something that is available everywhere as well. With Redshift, you have like a layer map, so you can use that. Max has something called as a composite map, so you can use that as well. Max has a mask map also, so you can use those. Then you need a color correction, so that you can sort of, if you want to change the color of your map or change the values like brightness, contrast, stuff like that, so you should have a color correction map. Then importantly, like if you have stored it like this, if you have saved your slope map and curvature map in like one map, you need like a channel extractor. Okay, so from a Houdini standpoint, you need like a vector to float, or you can also call it like a channel extractor. So anything that allows you to access like just the red channel or the green channel or the blue channel. So you need a map like that. Lastly, you should have like a dirt map or a curvature map. If you don't have a dirt map or a curvature map, we have already written out the curvature map anyways, but having a dirt map or a curvature map makes life a little more easier. Okay, but again, like this is stuff that is available. Like Redshift has a curvature map, Arnold has a curvature map. In Octane, it's called a dirt map. If you don't have any of these, you can also look for an ambient occlusion map. Okay, like it's the same thing. Not exactly, but you'll get a relatively similar result. Okay, so I think this is basically it. Okay, now let's talk about where you can get textures from. Okay, so you can get ground textures from a whole bunch of places. So firstly, like if you're looking for something free, you have this website called Texture Haven, so you can get textures from there. You also have textures.com. This is up to 1K resolution, it's free. And anything over that, there's like a monthly or an annual subscription. So if you look at the pricing, you should be able to get it. So yeah, you have like, you can get it for like, you can buy 5,000 credits. So you have like a monthly fee over here. So I had this for a while, but yeah, you can use this. Or you can get stuff from Megascans. Like Megascans will also give you stuff. Like I can look for, let's say, dirt. So it should give me something. Yeah, there you go. You'll have like dirt maps. Or if you're into substance, then you have a whole bunch of substance stuff. So you can look for ground and you'll get a whole bunch of stuff from there. So, you can download things from here. Okay, so how exactly do you go about building material using image maps? Now, the first thing about any of these maps that you're downloading is that they should be tileable. You don't want non-tileable images, otherwise like that just that's a disaster. Okay, so make sure that all your maps are tileable. Okay, this is very important. So what I did essentially was I have Substance Alchemist. Okay, so I downloaded like a bunch of substances from the substance source, and then I essentially just built up my own custom maps. So I downloaded like a grass map, and then I have like this granite and rocky moss, And then I picked up something for the cliffs. So I have like this thing called rock. And then I have about 4 or 5 of these. I have packed gravelly ground. And then you can mix them together. So if I pick up the rock and this, then it will automatically try and mix them together using your map. So I can actually like, increase or lower this offset. See, so it will mix it together. And then I also have like a mud. So there you go. So you have like mud. So what I essentially did was I downloaded these and I mixed them together, and then you have the option to export them. So you can export them as JPEG or PNG or EXR, whatever you want. So you can do it this way. Like if you have access to the Substance softwares, you can do it through that. If you have Quixel, Megascan, you can do it through. So you have like a whole bunch of options. You can just download textures as well. That's fine as well. But what you want is you want at least 2 of each. Okay, so since we are going to do like something like this is what we're going to do. So we want like grass, rocks and dirt. Okay, so that is what you want. If you're doing desert, then you want like rocks and like a sand texture, depending on what you're doing. You're doing snow, then you want like a snow texture and a rock texture. Anything like depending on what you're doing. But what you want is you want 2 of each. Yeah, my handwriting is terrible. Okay, so what we're going to do, because what happens is that even if your maps are tileable, when you tile them enough times, like let's say you do like 30 by 30, you will start seeing a repeat pattern. So the general idea is you take like dirt A and you take dirt B, okay, and then you take your mix, and this is like your mix amount. Okay, and what you do is you take a noise map. Yeah, so in this list you can also add like a noise map, right? You need like a fractal noise, which again is available in everything. And what you do is you take your dirt A, dirt B, and you mix them using a noise map. And you repeat that for everything. So you have your rocks. So you have like rock A and rock B. And again, this will also mix using a noise map. So what happens is that the noise map helps you to sort of break up the repeat pattern that you're seeing. So you have 2 different rocks and 2 different dirts and 2 different grass maps, and they mix together using a noise. So you get like a variation. Okay, so that is essentially how you go about doing it. And then once you have done this, then using the maps that we have written, so we have a slope and we have a flow and we have a debris, or we also have the dirt. So what you do is like this especially will mix in using the slope. So wherever it is taller, you get the rocks, and wherever it is flat, you get the dirt. So you put all of this again into a third mix, and this will mix using the slope. So this is the general way of doing it. And then lastly, on top of all of this, you want the grass. Okay, so again, so we have like, let's say the grass over here. And this finally again goes into a final mix. And here you have a bunch of options. So you can either use like a curvature map to mix these together. Okay, so you can mix this using a curvature map or dirt map or flow map, like here you can experiment. But this initial stuff, this usually will mix using a slope. Okay, because it looks more natural that way. You can mix it using a height map also, but a slope looks better. So this is your, this is your general way of how you go about, building a map. So, but this is important, like you need 2 of each so we can mix them together. So as I said, like if you look at this list, this is stuff that you have available in almost, any renderer. So as long as you have these things available, you can follow the same technique anywhere. You can even follow the same technique in Unreal, like it should work. Okay, so let's actually do this stuff. It's like this is a lot of theory, but I'm going to come to Octane. Like I'm doing this in Octane standalone. I'm not even doing it in Houdini. So what I've done is I've already written out my maps. So I have these. So I have the height and I have my debris and my slope. And then, okay, and so these are all of my textures. So I have like 2 dirt maps, 2 grass maps, and I have 3 rock maps, but I ended up using only 2 of them. Okay, so I have all of these. So let's get started. Okay, so what I'm going to do is in Octane, I'm just going to import in like a basic grid that I have made. So let me just load that up. So this is a grid, this is like 100 by 100. 100 meters by 100 meters. It has UV mapping as well. So I can just plug this in and let me just zoom out. Yeah, so it's a fairly big grid. And yeah, I just want to lower the resolution of this. Okay, and then I want to take like a basic material. So I'm going to take, I'll pick up a glossy material. So this is, I'm just going to build like the color map, but you can then build up the same thing for roughness and all of those things. It should be the same process. Okay, so I'm going to take a displacement and let's pick up the images. So I'll come into texture and I'll pick up a grayscale image and I'll pick up the height. Let me plug this in and I'll plug that into displacement. I'll set this to 4K because the map is 4K, and I will get the displacement height to about 30. Yeah, there you go. Okay, and then let's take a look at our all of the various maps that we have. Okay, so with Octane, I don't have a channel extractor inbuilt, so I have one through OSL. Which is, I can just come into OSL and I will load it up. So I have this thing called channels, okay, which essentially just gives me like RGB. And then I can just load up the textures that I have made. So I can come into RGB image, I'll pick up the flow, and then I'll take another RGB image and I'll pick up the slope. Okay, and then we can just do like Control-C, Control-V. So let's just check these. So I can plug this in over here on diffuse, and I'm going to lower the gamma down to 1. See, so this is my debris, and then if I come into my OSL, this is my flow map, and then that is my water. Okay, so you can have all 3 of these, and then from the slope map, again I'll bring the gamma down to 1. So I have, this is my curvature, like the green channel, the red channel was curvature, and then the green channel was slope. So there you go. And then the blue channel I just put in sediment. There is a little bit of something over there. Okay, if I remove the specularity, you should be able to see it. There you go. So that's my sediment. So again, so if I just look at this again, so I have like, the curvature and the slope and the sediment. We'll keep this to slope. And then here, as I said, we have the debris and the flow map and the water. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so let's start taking our textures. But before that, there's one final thing that I need to add to my list, which is we also need tri-planar mapping. Okay, so this is again something that is available in any render engine or any major render engine that you're using. If you don't have anything called tri-planar mapping, look for blended box. I believe that's the same thing. But the reason for using tri-planar mapping is that you don't get any stretching in the textures, especially on the vertical sides, because it projects the map from all 6 axes. So it's much more, it's better for terrains. But if you don't have a tri-planar map, you can just work with the standard mapping that is there on the geometry. Like that will be fine as well. Okay, so the way it works is I'm going to start taking the texture. So I'll pick up an RGB image and I'll pick up the first dirt. And what I want to do is, let me just rename this. I'll just call it dirt. And what you need to do is, in order to set this up into a tri-planar, this will be different for every render engine. But what in Octane, you need to sort of plug it into a tri-planar projection, and then you have a map called tri-planar. So if you come into textures, you'll find tri-planar. Okay, and then it's there for each axis, so positive, negative. So just plug it into everything. And if you plug it in, you'll see this. So let me just take the displacement down a lot so we can just see it. So by default, it tiles it up like a lot. You can see like down here, it's like, it's really repeating a lot. So just come into the dirt color and adjust your mapping till it's big enough. So I think this is fine. So this is what I was talking about. Like even though the map is tileable, you can still see a repeating structure coming up in place. So what you do is you take this one. I'm just going to move this up somewhere. And then I can take all of this, do Control C, Control V. So we have a second one. And this, I will change the map to dirt color B. Yeah, and let me just rename that to dirt B. And so if you plug this in, we'll get this. Now what you want to do is, let me just sort of, yeah, rotate it a little bit. Now what you do is you take a noise map. So just take texture and noise. So we have a noise map and just adjust this. So like make it big enough. Yeah. And then adjust the detail level of this. And we'll also adjust the contrast a little bit. Okay. And then what you can do is you take a mix map. And so this is A and B. Okay, and then you mix it with the noise map. And see, so what happens is the noise map essentially allows you to sort of break up the whole thing. Like we can adjust this a little bit. See, so yeah, there you go. So you can just adjust that. So you don't get as much of a repeat pattern in there. And you can also try to adjust like the gamma or something. So it's, you know, see, so you can sort of like make a little bit of variation on the whole thing. And adjust the tiling as well. Yeah, see, so there you go. So what you get is something that is slightly less, you know, repeating than before. So then we do the same thing for the rocks. Okay, and then what you can do is at the end of this, we can apply a color correction. I usually apply a color correction at the end of all of them, just so that we can sort of, you know, like if you want to adjust the saturation of this, or you feel like the whole thing should be lighter or darker, you can make those adjustments, you know, for the whole thing. Okay, and then what you can do is just take all of this and we will duplicate it. Okay, so just take all of this from here to there, do Control C, Control V, and this will be rocks. So we need 3 of them. So it's not complicated, it's just really big. This is the reason why personally I like using procedural textures, because I can do it in a slightly simpler way. Okay, so now, yeah, let's just, you know, we'll plug this in. I'll modify the noise map. Yeah, and then just we'll replace these with the rock textures that we have. So I'll take rock A. Yeah, and then here we'll pick up rock B. Yeah, see, so we have this. And then I can probably adjust this a bit more. Okay, and maybe make it slightly lighter. Yeah, just adjust it till you're sort of happy with it. Yeah, I think this is good. Okay, so there you go. So this is your rock. And then finally we can try to bring in the grass as well. So Control C, Control V, and yeah, the Octane node network isn't really the best thing possible. As I said, like it's a decent enough place to explain everything. So I can just take this and we will pick up the grass. So grass A, and then grass B. Yeah, there you go. Oh, that actually looks pretty decent. So if you do a close up, so you can get like nice detail. And from a distance, it doesn't give you that much of a repeat structure as well. If you really want to go very detailed, you can mix up to 3 maps. Okay, so, you know, whatever works. Okay, so this is done. Let me just rename these maps. Okay, and then what I can do is, there is an option in Octane to just group all of this. So I can just select all of this and group it. Like I'll leave the color correction out. I'll just group this. So I'll just say group items. Yeah, so that life becomes simpler. Yeah, and I can just call this grass and rocks dirt. Okay, so this is done. Right, so we have our rocks, we have our grass, and we have our dirt. Now we need to mix these together. Okay, so the first thing is let's get the texture displacement back to 30. Yeah, see, this looks actually pretty decent, but this isn't what we want to do. Yeah, so here I think this should be slightly more darker. Yeah, I think this is good. Okay, so let's bring in our slope, and all you need to do is we take another mix again. So take a mix texture and let's just check the slope once, see what it looks like. Yeah, so the white area should have the rocks and the dark area should have the dirt. So this will be like the first input is the dark area, the second input is the bright, and then we just plug in the slope over here, and I can plug that in, and there you go. So what I can do is I can probably take the color correction here and make the dirt darker. See, or let's keep the dirt light, increase the saturation a little bit. Let's make the rocks darker. So I can just take this and up it like that. Yeah. Or maybe just take the brightness on the whole thing and lower it. See, so this is why you need the color correction, so that it's easier to do this. And of course, since the maps are good, we should be able to get a decent bit of a close-up on the whole thing. You see, so you can get like a pretty decent, and these are not even 4K maps, these are actually 2K. Technically you should have 4K maps depending on how close you want to get to the stuff. But yeah, there you go. So this is pretty decent. And then the rest is fairly simple. Like the next thing we want to mix is the grass. So I can just take this in. And let's do one thing. Let's take the flow map and yeah, I'll duplicate this. The problem with Octane is that you can only have one output into an OSL map. So let's add the flow and the water together. Okay, so I'll just take an add here and I can add the flow and water. Yeah, and I can use this for grass. Okay, so again, we'll put a color correction at the end of this also. But yeah, this will also come into a mix. So what we'll do is we can take this and I'll take another mix texture. And again, this comes into first, this comes into second, and then yeah, let me just move all of this up. Yeah, this comes into third, and so what we should get is that. See, so you have your grass showing up in like these areas. See, okay. Again, like let's just make this like colorful, and let's try to adjust the gamma for this. Yeah, there you go. See, so I can adjust the gamma. So you have like a little more green on the whole thing. Yeah, you can try to adjust the contrast a little bit and just make like minor adjustments. Now here, as I said, like if you don't want to use the flow map or anything, we can try to use like the dirt map. Okay, so what I can do is, yeah, let's just make this dark. Yeah, I think that looks better. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Yeah, okay. So what I can do here is I can also take like a dirt map, or as I said, like we take a curvature map. So I can take a dirt texture and I can just plug this in, and we can use this for mixing. Okay, so what I can do is I can adjust the radius. Yeah, see, and adjust the detail. So I can pick up more detail and I can just invert it. So all of the top area like that, I should have, like a little bit of dirt. I can adjust the tolerance. Yeah, so what I want is like all of these top areas, or maybe like, yeah, maybe the crevices. I think that will be better. So let's say like the crevices have like, grass growing in them or something like that. We can probably plug this into a color correction to adjust contrast. So I can plug this in and let me just try to adjust the contrast. Yeah, see, so you can do something like this. And then what I can do here is instead of using the flow map, I can use this guy. See, so you'll get this. Actually, we'll have to switch this. So let's plug this over here and that over there. Yeah, see, so there you go. So the nice thing about the dirt map is that this is live. So if I make any changes here, like if I start to adjust the radius, you can sort of adjust it much more better. I can adjust I can invert it so it's on the tops like that. So you sort of get a lot more detail overall, and it's live, so that's a big advantage of this. And then because this is texture based, you can sort of zoom in fairly close and you'll get enough, see, you can start seeing the texture detail in there. And then of course on top of this you start scattering your plants and rocks and other foliage detail, because you don't want to leave the landscape just like that, unless it's like a long shot. Like if it's a long shot, then it's a different thing altogether. So yeah, so whatever suits you. Like once you've got this much set up, then you can sort of very easily make the rest of the adjustments. But yeah, if you want to use textures to start doing shading for terrains, this is sort of like the rough method to go about it. So yeah, the important thing is to have access to the basic maps, which is your slope map and flow maps and dirt map, like all of those things. If you have those, then the rest of it isn't much of a problem. Yeah, so I made like a few minor changes, just like modifying the color correction and stuff to get something that looks decent. And yeah, so this is what it looks like with the dirt map, which actually looks nice. It looks like it just rained over here, so it's not as dry. But yeah, this is essentially it. So this is how you can do shading for terrains using images. So now the only thing left is like, now how do you do your roughness and bump and stuff, which is you just take this entire node tree and you duplicate it, or you triplicate it, and then you just replace the color maps with your bump map or your roughness or whatever, and just connect it to the appropriate channels. That's primarily it. So you duplicate the process and you just replace the maps. Okay, that's essentially it. But the basic process is this. This is how you go about doing it. Yeah, so if you have any questions regarding this tutorial or anything else in general, you can ask me in the comment section, or you can write to me on Twitter or email me, or whichever other social media I'm on. And that's basically it.